This is the dev diary for Dynamop. Dynamop is a toilet paper defense game set in a grocery store with a mop with dynamite strapped to it as your only weapon. I came up with the idea because I really liked the food assets, and they had the new grocery store stands on Filebase, so I kind of went with that. It started out pretty quickly. I got all the walls up, got all the aisles in place, and then my scene crashed on me and I lost everything, so I had to start from scratch, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise because I realized I had to make the scene a lot smaller, just distance-wise for running and getting after the zombies. So basically I got everything in place, made a nav mesh, and randomly assigned end goals to the zombies to run to. So they start at a random entrance, and then they have a random end goal, then it switches it to a random exit. So it kind of changes it up every time where the zombie's going, so you don't quite know, and it adds a little bit of chaos to it. On exploding the zombies, I added guts to it, so when it explodes, it instantiates the guts prefab, which has a head, a torso, legs, and eyeballs, and arms as well, which I then add an explosion force. So at first I was just using an explosion force on the guts, and then later in the game, when I added all the rigid bodies in, I changed it to a sphere cast, which is then taking everything in that sphere and adding an explosion force to it. So that's how I get all the groceries on the shelves exploding with them. An issue I was actually having early on, which was a good lesson for me, is to make sure that any of your triggers are kinematic. For some reason, after I put all my rigid bodies in and changed that over, I couldn't get the nav meshes to take anymore, but it turned out that the rigid bodies on the triggers, which I was using for detection, since they weren't kinematic, they were actually getting exploded into the ceiling, and I wasn't using gravity on them. So that's what was causing my characters to be, or the AI to be too far away from the nav mesh. So good little lesson there that I learned. I wanted to add a little more persistence in the scene besides just the guts, so I found the blood splats. So it came with 4 blood splats. I randomized which one goes, so it's just a little more dynamic. And basically, since I have a level floor, I was actually able to just put one in the scene, figure out where I wanted it on the Y, and then all of them would just spawn at the characters X and Z, and then it would have the same Y across. If you wanted to do it dynamically, my guess would be just to raycast down and get the position there, and you would be able to find it pretty easily. I did like that it was random between the 4 blood splats, though. It just makes it look like you aren't using the same asset over and over. Same goes with the zombie growls when they're going around. I use 4 different assets, and basically I'm checking to see if they're still playing. If they aren't playing, then I pick one of the 4 and put a new sound on that. So just makes it so you're not hearing the same sound over and over. All of the footsteps and sounds are based on distance, so that kind of helped determine where the zombies are, because I was having a tough time in the beginning. One, I had to add in that active that you see over there, the active enemies left, because you weren't sure how many you were looking for when they were, and that helped a lot. And then the sound definitely helped determine what area they were coming from, so that was a big plus on that one. I also added reloading to the mop. You'll see it turns green when you need to reload. You click to reload, just giving you something else to do besides running. Felt like there was a little more strategy, not much, but just another thing to do rather than just, running and pointing your mop at things. Big lesson I learned is I was just kind of throwing things together pretty quickly, so I didn't have my scripts in a script folder. Then when it came to cleaning things up, I tried to move them into a scripts folder, and it detached my scripts from anything that had a reference to them. So I basically had to go through and retarget every single script on every single game object, which turned into be a pain in the butt. So definitely keep your scene organized. Don't do it as an after the fact, because it may just screw you over there. Another big one I learned is go ahead and just prefab out your UI. I somehow managed to delete it at one point and had to rebuild it. Something else went wrong with it and I had to rebuild it. I ended up rebuilding the UI like 7 different times. If I just prefabbed it in the beginning, life would have been so much easier. I could just pull it back in. So if you have something that you spent time and built like that, just to be safe, prefab it out, make your life a little bit easier. Putting this scene together was super easy. I was actually surprised how fast I was able to put it together. I mean, all the assets were already there. The shelves are actually just the shelves stretched out. On the X or Z, I don't remember. But I mean, it looks really well. It looks really good. It looks like grocery store shelves. So that was nice that they stretched so well like that. It would be nice to have some boxes, some tileable wall materials. The floors were great and the ceilings were great. They were just tiles. I could repeat them. But all the walls for all the materials have some sort of stripe or something going on them, which you can't tile. I just had to stretch out, so it looks a little soft and doesn't look that good. So that would, if that's one thing I'm looking for, it would be that, something I can just drop on my walls and call it a day. Some larger like windows would be nice too. Like the big grocery sliding doors would be super cool to have. But I mean, the doors worked fine for the most part. It got the point across. Getting the scene together was super minor. I just used the first person controller and dropped the mop on it and it worked perfectly. That was really nice. I didn't have to build that out. That saved a huge amount of time for me. So just being able to kind of put everything together really quickly was absolutely killer. I mean, I probably got the whole scene done in 4 or 5 hours, scripts included. Not counting that I had a couple crashes where I had to completely start from scratch. That was a pain in the ass, and I had some weird Visual Studio glitch where after it saved everything, it just destroyed all my scripts. So I had to go through and rewrite a bunch of methods and a bunch of functions, and that wasn't funny either. But as far as putting the scene together, no time at all. Filebase was awesome for that. In the build that you're watching right now, I'm having all sorts of strange things happening. I've tried clearing the cache on it. I don't know what's going on. For a while, none of the colliders on the shelves were working. They work in the editor, but they weren't working in the build. I had to go through and delete all the colliders, re-put them all back in, and that worked. There's supposed to be additional guts that work in the editor that aren't working in the build. If anyone has any idea why that would be, they're prefabbed correctly, everything works fine in edit, and the second I put them in the build, they don't even instantiate, which is super strange. So if anyone has any ideas on that, reach out to me. That would be great to figure out. I've never really had any issues like this in a build before where it doesn't mirror the editor, so kind of strange. I saw some other people are getting it on the same version of Unity, so it could just be a Unity bug. But yeah, I hope you guys like my game, and thanks for checking it out.